Al Bayt Stadium, the Lusail Iconic Stadium, Al Janoub Stadium, Stadium 974, Al Tumama Stadium, the Education City Stadium, and the renovation of Ahmad bin Ali Stadium and Khalifa International Stadium. All of these 8 venues are set to host the FIFA World Cup in 2022. All of these stadiums were built in the last decade after Qatar was chosen as the host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, and these stadiums alone cost Qatar around $10 billion. Cost is always a concern when a country is chosen to host a major sporting event like the Olympics or the World Cup. Here are the World Cup costs since the United States hosted in 1994. Qatar is estimated to spend almost $220 billion on the tournament, which is 20 times more than Russia did in 2018. But why is Qatar spending this much on a barely 1-month event? Let's find out. For a perception, South Africa spent $3.6 billion in 2010 World Cup. Brazil spent $15 billion in 2014 World Cup, which has led to protests that how can a government pour so much money into sports when so many citizens lack access to basic healthcare and education? The 2014 Winter Olympics cost Russia more than $50 billion, which caused protests since the public believed their money was being stolen. In another perspective, South Africa spent $54 per person to host the 2010 World Cup, compared to Brazil's $73 and Russia's $350 for the Sochi Games. However, Qatar plans to spend $100,000 per person, over 286 times more than Russia. One of the richest nations in the world, Qatar, is essentially starting from zero when it comes to creating its sports infrastructure. But again, these figures are crazy. The cornerstones of Qatar's economy, petroleum and natural gas, generate more than 70% of the country's total governmental revenue, more than 60% of its gross domestic product, and about 85% of its export earnings. Qatar is the second largest exporter of natural gas and has the third largest known natural gas reserve in the world. The economies of the majority of Middle Eastern nations are built on oil. There are time extensions on the game, but the game is gonna come to an end. Since hydrocarbons are a non-renewable resource, their extraction is becoming steadily more expensive. Not good news for a nation with an oil-based economy. Then how can you sustain that economy? Well, outside oil and gas, there are other industries in which you can diversify the economy. In some ways, Qatar is trying to implement that. After being chosen as the host, Qatar Sports Investment bought PSG in 2011, which looks like a coincidence, but it isn't. Many football clubs such as Manchester City and Abu Dhabi United Group, Real Madrid and Emirates, and most recently Newcastle United with the Public Investment Fund are owned or financed by oil tycoons. Being associated with the biggest sport in the world does allow its investors to pull something back. PSG, which was valued at $100 million in 2011, now has an astounding value of $3.2 billion. It's exactly what Qatar is doing. One of the main concerns with the 2022 World Cup is transportation. Over 1 million tourists are expected in Qatar for the World Cup, which is expected to draw attention to the country's central location. In fact, a lot of people think that during the World Cup, the number of visitors might even increase. However, even with that being the case, the main concern is how the visitors would get to Qatar. Are there going to be any ticket rushes? Therefore, Hamad International Airport and Qatar Airways will work together to bring a staggering 1,300 flights per day into the country for the duration of the month in order to address the lack of flights to the country. The choice has been made to make it easier for travelers to book a flight to Qatar. Qatar likewise made significant infrastructure investments over the past 10 years to transition its economy to one based on travel, similar to how UAE did. The host cities in Qatar are near to one another due to the tiny size of the nation. In actuality, Qatar is thought to be 1,478 times smaller than Russia, the country that hosted the last World Cup. As a result, traveling between cities shouldn't be too difficult. During the 2022 World Cup, the Qatar metro network is expected to transport about 1 million visitors. There are 100 stations spread out along the 300 kilometers length of the network. A station connects each World Cup stadium to the others. As a result, Qatar has addressed the issue of commutability. Additionally, according to analysts, if the number of tourists expected to travel by metro exceeds 1 million, Qatar will host the most visitors for any FIFA World Cup, about 3 times as many as there were in Brazil for the 2014 World Cup. Here are some statistics that show how commutable the FIFA World Cup in 2022 is expected to be. The Education City Stadium, which is one of the venues for the World Cup, is located a mere 50 minutes from Bahrain through the high-speed rail network. The 2 most remotely located stadiums in Qatar, Al Bayat and Al Janoub, are only 90 miles apart. One of the hottest countries in the world, Qatar has distressingly high summertime temperatures. Temperatures in Qatar can reach over 40 degrees Celsius during the months of June and July, which is often when the World Cup is held. As a result, the summer of Qatar presented the toughest challenge to Qatar and FIFA. But here's the thing. FIFA shifted the schedule from June and July to November and December in order to address the issue of summers and make the World Cup appear possible in Qatar, making this World Cup the first ever Winter World Cup to be staged in the Northern Hemisphere. For obvious reasons, the November-December time period is not a terrible choice for Qatar. In these months, the nation experiences temperatures between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. Hence, the weather is agreeable enough for tourists. Speaking of the stadiums being built by the host country for the FIFA 2022 games, they will have air conditioning which will provide visitors with relief from Qatar's hot summer days. This will be the first time its stadium has ever been completely air conditioned. So far as temperature is concerned, Qatar essentially has it covered. In Qatar, there are currently 40,000 or so accommodation options with the intention of increasing that number to 70,000. However, according to analysts, demand during the FIFA World Cup might reach over 1 million. Therefore, a significant obstacle facing Qatar for the World Cup is accommodation. The nation is constructing new hotels in time for the World Cup while also working on its infrastructure projects. In addition, the Qatari government has agreements with cruise ships that can hold up to 40,000 tourists during the World Cup. The catch is that many Qatari officials think that cruise ships might be difficult to handle. Rumors indicate that the nation has gotten in touch with Glastonbury, a well-known music festival in the United Kingdom. The plan is to construct tents in the desert to house guests during the FIFA World Cup in 2022. As a result, it's still unclear what will happen next in terms of accommodation. If Qatar hosts the World Cup successfully, the Arab world will experience a psychological boost. Therefore, Qatar is not having to cut back on any expenses to ensure its success, and Qatar will profit practically from the investment. Around 2023, oil fields are expected to run out. Foreign nations will be ready to help, but they will also be worried about the stability of the nation. So this will demand their investment and cooperation. Therefore, Qatar places great and essential importance on the projection of stability and visible investment through a long-term initiative, like the World Cup. Qatar is never going to be a superpower, but it has ambitions to be a player on the world stage. And in the international business community, Qatar will make every effort to make the most of this fantastic opportunity, the World Cup.